Today's shiur begins at the third to last narrow line on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. If you prefer, you can count 20 lines from the top. We continue in this shiur with what we have been discussing in our previous shiur. These are Agodos and Droshos on Psukim concerning the Shibud Mitzrayim, Shmois, Perek, Aleph. And by all means, if you haven't done so already, go over the Psukim in Shmois, Perek, Aleph, and also in Perek, Beis. The Gemara will be making constant reference to those Psukim, assuming familiarity with the context. Before we continue in the Gemara itself, we glance at the side where we have a topic heading, which reads, number 1, Gzeras Paro al Hayalodim, Paro's edict to kill the Jewish children, and number 2, Amram and Yocheved, the parents of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara. Vayetzav Paro l'chol amoy. Paro instructed his entire nation. Omer Rav Yossi Berger af al amoy gozar. They had reached a point where Paro issued an edict concerning the Egyptian children as well, because at this point that the pasuk is speaking, the stargazers of Paro said that today the Savior of Israel has been born, and they didn't know whether the Savior was a Mitzri or a Yehudi. Was he Egyptian or Jewish? And he therefore said that all those that are born today, even his own people, those children are to be cast into the water. The Gemara continues, the Omar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Sholosh Gzeros Gozar. There were 3 stages of rulings of edicts. Number 1, B'tchila im benhu v'amiten oisoi. Rashi adds over here that at this first stage he ruled that any male child that's born, any Jewish male child that's born, so the instruction was to the midwives that they should kill the child upon birth. He relied on the midwives and didn't have any guards overseeing. Number 2, v'achar kach kol haben hayilod hayairo tashlichuhu. Any child born, any male child born, is to be thrown into the river. And at this stage he appointed guards. Number 3, Ulebasof af al amoy gozar. Even on his own nation, as we explained earlier, the Rashi adds here, Ulebasof al amo kideprecious, as we said earlier, v'kevan shovar hayom v'adayin royim mitztagninov shelo loka, hemid hagzera ad yom shehushlach leor. The stargazers noticed that the sign that the Savior of Israel was born remained. In other words, he is still around. So that from the time he was born, that sign did not disappear. He kept throwing all the children, the male children that were born, he kept throwing them into the water. He kept killing them until the day that Moshe Rabbeinu, as an infant, until he was cast into the water, also in the basket. It just so happens that there was a 3-month gap between his birth and his being cast into the water. So for a period of 3 months, children were being killed, including children of the Egyptians. We continue in the Gemara. Vayelech ish mi beis Levi. And a man from the house of Levi went, Lehechon holach, where did he go? And in the pasuk says that Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, vayikach es bas Levi, and he took the daughter of Levi. So the Gemara asks, the pasuk beginning with the words Vayelech ish, and he went, where did he go? Omar Rav Yehuda bar Zavina, shaholach ba'atzaz bito. The pasuk is referring to Amram, who followed the counsel of his daughter Miriam. And here we get more background in the following Tanaic source. Tana. Amram Godol Hador Hoya. Amram was the greatest of his generation. He was a leader. Kevan Shegozar Paro Horosha at the point that Paro issued his edict, Kol haben hayilod hayairot tashlichuhu, all male children shall be cast into the water. Omar, so Amron's reaction was, Lashov onu amelim, we are working for nothing. Amelim means working, it has to do with raising children, with bearing children. So we're doing for nothing, we're working for nothing. Omar v'gireshes ishto, he arose and divorced his wife, Yochevet by name. Omdu kulon v'girshu es nishosehem. So he is the leader, everyone followed, and all the men folk divorced their wives. Omra lo bito. His daughter, named Miriam, says to her father, Amram, Abba, your edict, your behavior, your ruling is worse than that of Paro. Paro issued a death warrant to all male children. And by your divorcing your wife, my mother, by your separating from her and everyone else following suit, not only were male children not to come about, females also would not be born. Paro's ruling was only in this world. When you rule that a child is not even going to be born, that's worse. There's no this world for the child, nor any world to come. In the case of a child that's born but dies, they come back in Olam Haba. In the next world, they come back to life. But your Gezerah is one that's going to result in their not being born at all. And something that's not born at all doesn't have a portion, doesn't come, reappear in the world to come. Paro Harosha, Sofik Miskayemes Gezerah, Sofik Eino Miskayemes. Paro ruled, and he's a human being, and people, will they follow or not follow? It's a doubt. Maybe his ruling will be upheld, maybe not. Ata tzaddik, you are a righteous man. Bevadai shegzeiroschem miskayemes, and your ruling definitely will be fulfilled. Shneimar vatigzo imer vayokom loch. The pasuk says that when a tzaddik rules, the Almighty sees to it that it's fulfilled. Omad v'hifzri es ishto. So with these arguments, he took back his wife. And all the rest of the Jews followed suit and took back their wives. The pasuk that we read earlier, at the end of the first wide line of the Gemara, it said Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, and the continuation of the pasuk was Vayikach es bas Levi. But according to the explanation we just heard, it's not that he took her; it's he returned her. Vayikach, vayachzor mi boyale. The better language should have been, the more accurate expression would have been, and he took her back. So why did the Torah choose the word vayikach? Omar Rav Yehuda bar Zavina, she'osa lo maise lekuchin. He, Amram, made for his wife what appeared to be like a wedding. Hoshiva ba pirion, he sat her. And a pirion is translated as a palanquin type of litter that is carried by people by poles on their shoulders. So he sat her in this transportation entity called an apirion. The Aaron umirion miraktim lefoneha. Her children, Aaron and Miriam, who had already been born, danced in front of her. Malachi Ashoris Omru, and the service angels proclaimed, Aim Habonim Smecha, the mother of children rejoices. The pasuk says, the pasuk we quoted above, Es Bas Levi, namely the man from the house of Levi took the daughter of Levi. Now the word Bas has a youthful connotation, so the Gemara asks, Efshir Bas Me'ava Shloishim Shana Havya V'Kori Lo Bas? Could it be that at this point in time she was 130 years old, and the term Bas is used? It's true that Bas means daughter of Levi, but it also has this youthful connotation. Let us skip the bracketed section momentarily to get directly to the answer. Omer Yehuda, why did the Torah use the word bas regarding a 130-year-old woman? Shenoldu bo simone narus. There appeared signs of youthfulness that returned to her. Physical signs of youthfulness. Now we mentioned that she was 130 years old at this time. In the brackets we have the calculation for that. The Omer of Chamo Bar Chanina, Zu Yochevet, the pasuk that said Bas Levi, it's a reference to Yochevet. Sheirosa Baderech V'leidosa Ben Achomos. She was conceived on the trip of the children, the descendants of Yaakov Avinu, down to Mitzrayim, and she was born between the walls, meaning at the entrance to Mitzrayim. Shenemar Asher Yolda Oisa LeLevi b'Mitzrayim. And we learn from this pasuk, Leidosa b'Mitzrayim vein hoirosa b'Mitzrayim. Her birth was in Mitzrayim, but her conception was prior. So if you calculate the years from the initial arrival of the Jewish people to Mitzrayim and the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, you will find that she was 130 years old at this point. So the question is, why did the Torah use the word bas? So we read the answer already. On Rav Yehonasan Noldu bas Simone Narus. The pasuk says Vataharo Isha Vateled Bain. The pasuk says, and she conceived, reference to, of course, Yochevet, and she bore a child. The Gemara asks, V'ha Hafiz mi'abra be tlosa yarchi me'ikora. In truth, she had been pregnant with him for 3 months prior to her being taken back after the divorce. So the pasuk that says upon her being returned and now she conceived, that is not accurate. It's not and now she conceived. She had conceived before she had been separated from her husband Amram. Omar Rav Yehuda bar Zvina. The reason the pasuk uses the word vatahar together with the word vateled, which means to actually give birth, makish leidosa lahirosa. The Torah wants you to see a comparison between the birth and the conception. Ma hoirosa shlo b'tzar, just like initial conception is without any pain, af leidosa shlo b'tzar. So too in her case, the birth of Moshe was without any pain, which is of course very unusual in the realm of womanhood. Mikan, we learn from here, lenoshim tzidkonios, that righteous women shalohoyu bepiska shel Chava, that they were not included in the edict, the ruling that applied to Chava after the sin in Gan Eden, where the Torah says be'etziv teildi bonim, that you will bear children in pain. So noshim tzidkonios, righteous women, were not included in that particular ruling. Vatera oisoi ki tovhu, upon Moshe Rabbeinu the infant, his birth, the pasuk says, and she saw that he was good. Tanya. And regarding what does it mean ki tovhu, we have a Tanaic source that elaborates on that. And on the side, by the way, we should point out we have a nosei, a topic heading that indicates that this discussion, this topic goes till Yud Gimel Omer Aleph. We're going to be speaking here about the Leidas Moshe v'Hatzaloso b'Teva, the birth of Moshe and his salvation in the basket. The Gemara, Rabbi Meir Omer Tov Shmo, the child's name was Tov. In other words, he was the daughter of Pharaoh. Later on, gave him the name Moshe, but his real name or his birth name was Tov. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tuvia Shmo, that his birth name was Tuvia. Rabbi Nechemya Omer, his interpretation of Tov, who means Hagun Lenevius, he was fit for receiving prophecy. Acher Omrim Nolad Shumol. Another opinion is that he was born already circumcised, and that's what Tov means. Rav Chamim Omrim B'shah Shenolad Moshe Nismale Habayis Kulo Or. When he was born, the house became filled with light. It says in the birth, with regard to the birth of Moshe, and she beheld that he was Tov. In the story of the creation of the world, the pasuk says, "Vayara Elokim es haor ki tov," and the Almighty saw that the or, the light, was good. So you see the expression ki tov in both places. Hence, we transfer the idea of, or transpose the idea of light from the story of creation to the birth of Moshe. Vatitzpeneu shloisha yerochim, the mother of Moshe, was successful in hiding him from the point of his birth for 3 months. Delomonu Mitzrayim Elo Misha da Hadra. The Egyptians, when they would say they placed their guards and followed their suspicions, they counted the 9-month pregnancy period from the time that Amram took her back, assuming that now he would impregnate her. But she had already been pregnant with him 3 months from before, so that he was born at a point in time that the Egyptian guards had thought there still are another 3 months till any child would be born. And they reached the point in time where she couldn't hide him anymore. In other words, 3 months after he was actually born, she couldn't hide him anymore. Why can't she hide him and keep going like that? Wherever the Egyptians got word that a child was born, Mamtu Yenuka Hasam, they would in turn bring another child, one of their own children, to that location, so that when the child that the Egyptians were holding outside would start crying, any infants inside, hearing the cries of another child, they would join along. That's the nature of infants. When they hear another one's cry, they themselves cry, and that was their tactic in revealing children that were otherwise hidden. Once the sound was picked up by the ears of that hidden child, it would start crying as well, and hence the guards would discover its whereabouts. And this idea of we'll call them Egyptian infant children, being responsible for catching Jewish children through their crying, is captured in this pasuk. Dichtiv achsu lanu shualim kitanim. We were entrapped by young foxen. The young foxen being the Egyptian children that would cry from outside and reveal the whereabouts of a Jewish child that was being hidden. Vatikach lo tevas gome, and she took for her child, that's Yocheved took for Moshe Rabbeinu, a tevas is a basket, gome, made of gome material, reed material. My shno gome, why did she choose reed material? Omar Rebbe Ozer, mikan letzadikim shemamon chaviv aleim yoser migufan. From here, that she chose this particular material, which is a very inexpensive material. It's inexpensive, but it's effective. It's able to protect the child that's placed in it. We learn from here that the righteous shemamonam, their money is chaviv aleim, is precious to them more so than migufan, more than their own bodies. The Rashi points out something we didn't say. Shechaviv aleim amonen. Second line from the bottom in the Rashi, shedomov muatim. It's inexpensive material. Even though, as far as protection is concerned, wood would have been a better protection material. Nevertheless, tzaddikim aren't going to risk it by paying more money than they can afford. And the Gemara asks, why are they so, let's say, watchful of their money? The whole kach loma, why so much watchfulness? Because they don't want to be tempted to engage in thievery. What do we mean by that? The person has a certain, let's say, given amount of money. He knows how much money he has in his account. Using that amount, and only that amount, will keep him from being tempted to finding himself lacking funds, and then being tempted to pursue gezel, robbery, thievery, in order to attain means. So, when it comes to, let's say, way of living, tzaddikim are very careful with the funds, often limited funds that they have, even if it's at the expense of buying something that's, we'll say, less effective as a protection material than something else. We continue in the Gemara. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Omar, what's the significance of gomeh? Davar rach, it's a soft material. Sheyochel lamo b'fnei rach u'b'fnei davar rach u'b'fnei davar kosher. And when it comes to matters of colliding and impact, when the child is placed in the basket and the basket is placed then into the water, who knows what the basket is going to come into contact during the current of the water, the current or the tide that is felt. It is the basket collides with things. So reed material is effective in withstanding collisions with hard substances as well as with softer substances. Davar rach is soft. Vatachmero b'chemor u'bezefes, and it was covered with tar and pitch. Tana chemor b'bifnim, chemor material, it's a lining material, was used from within. V'zefes mibachutz, and zefes, which is sometimes translated as tar, from the outside. Why was the zefes is smeared specifically on the outside and not on the inside? So that the Osid Tzaddik, the righteous one, that child, namely Moshe Rabbeinu, shouldn't have to endure a negative odor, which is characteristic of zefes. The pasuk says, "Vatosem es hayeled, vatosem basuf." What does it mean that the child was placed in the suf? Reb Elazar Omer Yam Suf. Yam Suf, the name of a sea, the reed sea, and Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Omar, and we continue at the top of Omid Beis. Agam. Rashi says at the top, Agam shel atzei arova v'konim dakim, type of marsh that had growing in it willows and thin reeds. V'hu koneh v'suf dekra. The pasuk that the Gemara quotes on the top line of the Gemara, kidechtiv koneh v'suf komelu. In that pasuk, you see suf not as a reference to a sea, as a name of a sea, but rather it's a reference to reeds. Pasuk is koneh v'suf, reeds and rush. Komelu itself means in the context of that pasuk in Yeshaya, they will wither. Vatered bas paro lirchoitz alayor. The pasuk continues after the child was placed in the basket into the let's say the marsh or the water. The daughter of Pharaoh went down, and it says lirchotz alayor, literally to bathe on the river. Amar Rav Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon Yochai Malame. This teaches us she yorda lirchos migilulei aviyah. She descended in order to cleanse herself from the idolatry of her father. In other words, we're describing immersion in water for conversion purposes. V'cheinu omer imrochatz Hashem es tzoyas b'nei Sion v'chulei. You see that rechitza is used in the context of bathing, of cleansing from that which is detestable. Idolatry is detestable, and this pasuk was just quoted makes reference to Sotah, is feces, a human waste. The pasuk says v'naroseh holchos v'chulei. The pasuk describes the princess, the bas paro, the daughter of Pharaoh, going down into the water, as we just explained, and her maidservants holchos were walking along. Amar Rav Yochanan ein halichazu el loshon misa. The word holchos means, as the Gemara will describe later on, they were walking to their death. V'chein hu omer hinei anochi holech lomus. You find this pasuk where he says, and I am on my way to die. So the word holech has a connotation, or is found used in association with going to death. So the naros, the maidservants of Bas Paro, were on their way to death, as will be explained later. Vateres ateva b'soich hasuf, and she noticed, that's the daughter of Paro, noticed the basket in the suf. Kevon dechozu deko boris la'atzuli l'Moshe. When the maidservant saw that she, the daughter of Paro, the princess, was going to save Moshe in the basket, Amru la, they appealed to her as follows: Give your tenu, our mistress, Minhagay shel olam, the way of the land is what? A mortal king issues a ruling, an edict. Even if the rest of the world doesn't fulfill his wishes, at least his children, his sons, his daughters, members of his household, they will at least fulfill his edicts. Fiat, and you, princess, the daughter of the king, you are violating your father's ruling. Bo Gavriel v'chovdan b'karka. The angel Gavriel came and smote them down into the ground. We made reference before to the maidservants of Bas Paro on their way to death. Here you see that actually happening. When they started to raise eyebrows regarding the Bas Paro's attempts to save Moshe Rabbeinu, well, they paid a very heavy price. They paid with their own lives. The Pasuk says, Vatishlach es Amosa Vatikocheha. The Bas Paro, the daughter of Paro, who noticed the basket in the water, it says she sent her Amo. She stretched out her Amo and took it. Well, what does Amo saw really mean? So we have two opinions. Rabbi Yehuda of Rabbi Nechemia Chad Omar Yoda. One says she stretched out her arm, and V'chad Omar Shivchosa, that Amosa means her maidservant. Mad Omar Yoda, the opinion that says she stretched out her hand, it's a reference to that Amosa is a reference to hand or to arm. Dichtiv Amosa. The word for arm, in fact, is Amosa. That's a common expression for an arm. Umad Omar Shivchosa, from the opinion that says that she sent her bondmaid to fetch the basket. Midaloksiv Yoda, since the more common word Yoda was not used, so Amosa is taken to mean a bondmaid, which also is referred to elsewhere as an Amo. You find the term Amo Ivriya, a reference to a bondmaid. Ulamad Yomar Shivchosa, according to the opinion that says she sent her bondmaid, but did we not say just a little while ago, we said Bo Gavriel v'chovtan bakarka, that the angel Gavriel came and smote her bondmaids. They were raising, challenging her, raising objections to her trying to save the baby, and the angel killed them. So how does she have a bondmaid around to send to save the child? The Gemara answers the shiur lo chada. The angel, true, he killed the bondmaids, but he left one. The lav urcha, the bas malka lemekam lechuda. It's not proper etiquette for a daughter of a king, for a princess, to be left by herself. So one was left to accompany her, and that was the one that she sent to fetch the child. According to the opinion that says Vatishlach es Amosa means she stretched out her arm, use the word Yoda, which is a more common term than Amosa. Answer, Ha Komashman. The choice of the word Amo teaches us the following: Ishtar Bev Ishtar Buvi. Miraculously, her arm lengthened, so that using the term Amo is a word indicating not just arm, but that the arm got lengthened miraculously. The basket wasn't literally at her feet, it was out some distance into the marsh or the water, so in order to reach it, her hand needed to be extended, and it did so miraculously. Di Omar Mar, it has been taught, V'chein ato motzei ba'amoso shel bas paro, v'chein ato motzei b'shinei rishoyim. Two polarly different cases, one involving a righteous one and one involving a wicked one. You find miraculous extension in the case of Bas Paro's arm, and miraculous extension regarding the teeth of the wicked. Dichtiv Shinei Rishoyim Shibarta. The teeth of the wicked, literally, you broke. Rather, they became extended. And the story behind the teeth of the wicked becoming extended, so that involves a story involving Og Melech HaBoshan, who tried to throw a mountain on the Jewish people, and he raised the mountain over his head, and insects created such that the mountain disintegrated in the middle, thereby falling on his head, around his neck, and he tried to take the mountain off his head, so his teeth extended from the sides of his mouth outwards into the mountain, thereby preventing him, disabling him from being able to remove the mountain now that his teeth were wedged into it. That's the story behind the extended teeth. We continue in the Gemara. Vatiftach vatireu es hayeled. She opened the basket and she noticed the child. However, the language of the pasuk is a little bit cumbersome. Vatere mi boyale. It should have said vatiftach vatere es hayeled. Vatirehu indicates that there's someone else, something else over there. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina sheruaso shchina imo. She saw the divine presence along with the child. The Rashi, on the third line from the top, at the end of the line, he says, Shuasu imo shchina, v'hai es, the word es in the pasuk, v'tireu es hayeled, is loshon im, together with, kamo lo sholach Yaakov es echav. So the word es indicates, together with the use of the word vatireu, that she opened the basket, and behold, there was the divine presence with the child. The pasuk says, "V'hinei na'ar boiche." The word na'ar indicates a youth, not an infant. Kori le yeled, v'kori le nar. How could it be that in the same pasuk you see the child being referred to as a yeled, as a boy, an infant, and at the same time as a nar, a youth? Tona, who yeled v'kolo kenar, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So the Tanaic source, which features two opinions in it, starts with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says, true, he was an infant, but the sound that he was emitting was one of a youth, not an infant sound. Omar lo Rabbi Nechemia. Im Kain, Rabbi Nechemia says, well, if that's how you're describing Moshe Rabbeinu, Asito le Moshe Rabbeinu balmum, you're describing him then as having a blemish, a vocal blemish. And Rashi adds, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Levi, and a Levi, eventually when the Mishkan was set up, they would sing. Their voice was a critical part of their service. And here you're describing Moshe, who was a Levi, having a voice deformity. Elo malamed sha'ostalo imo chupas ne'urim ba'teva. Rather, what the word nar indicates is that his mother, Yocheved, she apparently put in the basket what would appear to be a marriage canopy. Omro shemo lo ezke lechupaso. It was some type of symbolic gesture on her part that she felt, maybe I won't merit being at his wedding. So the word nar is more a reference to what the interior of the basket looked like as a result of his mother's doing. The pasuk says that the Bas Paro had compassion and said, this is a Jewish child. How did she know that? She noticed that he was circumcised. The word zeh appeared in the pasuk. What does this teach us? She, the daughter of Paro, said prophecy not realizing that she was prophesying. And what does that refer to? Zeh noifel ve'ein achar nofel. This one is going to fall into the water. In other words, this is the last child to be cast into the water. At that day, the royal edict was voided, stopped. V'hainu d'Amar Rabbi Ozer, mai dichti v'chiyomru alechem And it will be when the heathens will tell you to follow all kinds of soothsayers and fortune tellers. The use of the word mitzafsefim in the pasuk is a reference to tzoifin ve'enon yodim matzofim. They see things they don't realize what they're seeing. Mahagim ve'enon yodim ma mahagim, and they say things and they don't realize what they're saying. That's what Rebbe Ozer says about the pasuk of v'chiyomru aleichem. And now the Gemara explains what the relevance of Rabbi Elazar's drasha is to our discussion. Ra'u, the stargazers of Paro, saw Shemoishion Shel Yisrael b'mayim huloike, that he would be afflicted by water. Omdu v'gazor, and as a result of their recognizing that the Savior of Israel would be afflicted by water, they ruled Kol haben hayilod hayoru tashlichu, that all the boys shall be cast into the water. Kevan deshadyuhu leMoshe Amru, when Moshe Rabbeinu was cast into the water, Su lo chazinon kiahu simona. They said, "Oh, we don't see that sign anymore." The sign indicating the affliction of the Jewish leader. Batlu gzerosayu. They canceled their edict, feeling that mission accomplished. The leader of the Jewish people, their savior, was now gone, was cast into the water. V'heim einon yodin. They did not realize, though, that the sign that they saw, indicating that the Savior of Israel would be smitten by water, is shalmei meriva huloike. Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for the story involving the waters of contention, the story where he, instead of speaking to the rock, addressing the rock by speech, he hit the rock in the desert, which brought forth water, and by his not following to the letter the Almighty's command, so he was punished for that. So water was in fact the source of his ultimate punishment. However, the idea of the leader's downfall through water was not the being cast into the water as an infant. So it's in this light that we say that the soothsayers, they see things but don't realize what they're seeing. And it's with this background that Rabbi Chanina says, in the case of the waters of contention, the rock and the hitting of it thereof that we just mentioned, it says in the pasuk, Heimo mei merivo asher rovu. These are the waters of contention, and the explanation is Heimo, these are the waters Shero itzdagnine Paro v'tou, that the stargazers of Paro actually saw but made a mistake. V'hainu d'komer Moshe, and it is that which Moshe says, Sheish meos elef ragli v'chulei. Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Jewish people that as follows: Omar lahen Moshe Yisrael b'shvili. The word ragli in this pasuk means because of me, or for me. Nitzaltem kulchem. You were all saved. We take a look at the Rashi. What does Moshe Rabbeinu mean that through these waters you were all saved? Rashi says, b'shvili nitzaltem shebitlu mitzrayim es gzerosa. Because of me, because of my being thrown into the water, the stargazers stopped seeing the sign indicating the downfall of their leader. So the Egyptians canceled the Gzera, but it's actually these waters, the waters of contention, that they were seeing as being the source of my retribution. And all the same, it's because of me, meaning my being thrown into the water as an infant, that the Egyptian edict was cancelled. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa Omar, Oiso Hayom, the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was cast into the water. Here you'll have, by the way, two opinions that have to do with the with dates of Moshe Rabbeinu's being in the water. So Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa says that day that he was placed in the water was Esrim Ve'echad B'Nisan Hoya. And by the way, just to repeat, we mentioned that he had been, from the time of his birth, he was hidden for 3 months in his house. It's only 3 months after his birth that he was cast into the water. So Reb Chanina Bar Papa says that day that he was cast into the water in the basket was Esrim Be'echad B'Nisan. It was the 21st of Nisan. Esrim Be'echad B'Nisan Hoya. Omru Malachei Hashores. The service angel said, L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they pleaded in front of the Almighty, Ribono Shel Olam, Mi she'asid loymar shira al hayam b'yom zeh, yiloke b'yom zeh. He who ultimately, eventually is going to say, sing your praise at the crossing of the sea on this day, the 21st of Nisan, should be smitten on this day. This is the day that he should die. In other words, there's significance in the 21st of Nisan. That have mercy on him. He eventually is going to sing your praise. Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina Omar Oisa Yoim Shisha B'Sivan Hoya. That was not the 21st of Nisan. It was the 6th of Sivan. Amru Malachi Ashoris Fnei Kodesh Baruch. And you have the similar scenario of the service angels pleading with the Almighty. Ribono Shel Olam. He was destined to receive the Torah on this day. The holiday of Shavuos is associated with the 6th of Sivan, the day of Matan Torah, of the receipt of the Torah. Should he be afflicted on this day? So we have here 2 dates denoting the casting of Moshe into the water. According to the 6th of Sivan approach, we can account for the 3 months that he was able to be hidden prior to that. Now, the Gemara is going to present the information that's necessary, but we'll just say ahead of the Gemara that there is a given in this discussion that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar. And as far as the order of months are concerned, I'm sure most of you know the order of months, but what's relevant to us is realize the months are Adar, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. Adar is the month in which Purim falls out, followed by Nisan, the month in which Pesach falls out, Iyar, and then Sivan, the month in which we celebrate Shavuos. So, according to the opinion, the second opinion that says he was cast into the water, placed in the basket, into the marsh on the 6th of Sivan, we can account for the 3 months since the 7th of Adar. Diyomar Mar, B'Shiva Ba'adar Meis, B'Shiva Ba'adar Noilad Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 7th of Adar, and it just so happens he was born on that same day, the 7th of Adar. And from the 7th of Adar till the 6th of Sivan, you will find 3 months. But if you accept the opinion that he was put into the water on the 21st of Nisan, where do you find an accounting of 3 months? If anything, from Adar to Nisan, you've got 1 month over there. So the Gemara explains, that year was a leap year. In a leap year, an extra Adar is added. So he was born in the first Adar. Rubo Shel Rishon, that's the majority of the first Adar. So he was born the 7th. A month has, let's say, 29 or 30 days. The 7th is just at the very beginning of the month. The bulk of the month follows. So you have the majority of the first month of Adar Rishon. The Rubo Shel Achron, the majority of the last month. The last month in this counting is Nisan. Until you have him in the water until the 21st. And not in the water, that is, he was placed in the water on the 21st of Nisan, but until that point, the majority of Nisan he was still at home. So you have the majority of the first month, from the point that he was born, he was at home. You have the majority of the last month, till the 21st of Nisan, that he was still at home. The Emtsoi Shalom, and the middle month, in this case, Adar Sheni, the middle month, complete. That's how we count for 3 months. After the Bas Paro had gathered in the child, the sister of the child, namely Miriam, approached the princess and offered her the following, saying, should I go and call for you an Israelite or a Hebrew wet nurse? Meinekes is a wet nurse from the Ivrios, from the Jewish people. So what's the explanation for the sister, for Miriam, going to the princess, suggesting I should call you a Jewish wet nurse? What led up to that? It's like some kind of strange offer out of the blue, wouldn't you say? Malame, this tells us that Bas Paro, the princess, the daughter of Paro who saved the child, naturally was seeking out a means of sustenance for the child. And she brought the child to all kinds of Egyptian women that were lactating, all kinds of wet nurses, and the lo yonak, and the child refused to suckle from the heathen Egyptian women. Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu, there's a girsa, the Almighty said, Pez she'oseh l'dabir mashchino, the mouth that's going to speak with the divine presence. Moshe Rabbeinu had a very direct form of communication with the Almighty Himself, so the mouth that's going to converse with the Almighty, yinak dover tomei, should he suckle from something that is defiled? This idea of suckling from a female, human female wet nurse. What is the idea of dover tomei? Tomei is associated with forbidden food. The milk coming from a heathen woman isn't necessarily forbidden food, but rather what a person eats. In case a woman who is nursing, what she eats, the food is converted into the milk that she produces, so to speak. So the milk coming from her traces back to foods that she ate, and as a heathen woman, she was eating forbidden foods. And here we exercise this higher level of precaution with regard to this particular child, Moshe, who was going to converse with the Almighty, that he should not intake anything that has any trace of prohibition. V'hainu dichtiv, and it's with this in mind that the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Esmi yoira deya, v'esmi yovin shmuel, who is it that will be able to teach and understand Torah learning? Gemule mecholov atike mishodayim, the one who is weaned from milk, who is removed from the breasts. Lami yoira deya ulami yovin shmuel, unto whom did the Almighty teach Torah? To the one weaned from the milk and was separated from the breasts of the heathen women and the Devorim Tameim. Vatoimer lo Bas Paro l'chi, go. But the Bas Paro said to Miriam, go. Vatelecho alma, and the alma went. What is the significance of the word alma? And here we're going just to make a parenthetical note. The word alma is a word that it's rather well known, is misconstrued by Christians who try to present hints in the Old Testament to where their worshipped figure, their god form, comes from, and they translate the word alma into some type of a virgin woman, and nothing of the kind. The word alma has nothing to do with virginity. The word for virginity is besula. Here the Gemara says quite explicitly, Amar Rav Ozer melamed sheholcha bezrizus ke'alma. She went in diligence, in haste, in swiftness. Zrizus is swiftness and diligence, like an alma, like a young woman. She was, we're talking about a girl of 6 years old, basically. There was a 6-year age gap between Moshe and Miriam. And here Miriam was walking with swiftness like a young maiden. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nechmeni Omar Ho'almo. The word Ho'almo is she'elimo es dvorah. For haloma is to be hidden. She hid the fact that she was the sister of that baby, and she was going to, in fact, call the actual birth mother of the child. So, Almo is the one, the one that hid the facts. The pasuk says, "Vatomer lo basparo heilichi es hayeled hazeh." Basparo, upon meeting Yocheved, the actual mother of Moshe, the daughter of Paro, says, "Take this child." And here the Gemara is going to focus on what she said. In the same vein as we saw earlier, Basparo's ability to prophesy or say things that are really unknown to her, which in fact are truths. So, Omar Rabbi Chamo bar Chanino, misnabo v'inu yedeh ma misnabo. She was prophesying and not realizing what she was saying. Hey lifi means ha shelifi, take that which is yours. She had no way of knowing that this woman that was coming was the actual mother of the child. And yet she used the word heilifi, which is take ha shelifi, take that which is yours. And the pasuk says, "Ve'ani etein es chorech," and I will pay you for nursing the child. Omer Rab Chamo bar Chanino, lo dayan letzadikim shemachzir lohen avedason. It's not enough that the righteous merit having that which was lost from them returned to them. Here you have Moshe, her son, Yocheved's son, being returned to her. They even get paid. Vatikach Miriam haneviyah achois Aaron v'chulei. The pasuk describes. This is a pasuk from the Shiur Hayam. It describes at the crossing of the sea. The Oz Yashir, the song of the sea, was recited by the Jewish people, and the women folk, led by Miriam, also said Shira, and it describes Miriam, who led the women folk at that point in time. That Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron. Well, she was the sister of Moshe also, wasn't she? Achos Aaron v'lo achos Moshe. Why does the pasuk describe her as the sister of Aaron and not make mention of the fact she was the sister of Moshe? Omar Rav Amram Omar Rav. Amram is actually quite an appropriate name in this discussion. For Amram in the name of Rav, Yamri Lo Omar Rav Nachman Omar Rav. Another version is Rav Nachman in the name of Rav says, Malamed Shoisa Misnabo K'shi Achos Aaron. She was saying prophecy when she was very young. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't even born, and she could be described only as the sister of Aaron. And the Gemara continues at the top of Daf Yud Gimel, V'oimeres, and she was saying as prophecy, Asida ini shetele ben shemoshias Yisrael. My mother is going to give birth to the child, the son that will save Israel. The kevan shenoilad Moshe, and when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, nismala kol habayis kula or, the house was filled with light. We saw this drasha back on Daf Yud Beis when we saw Ki Tov. Omad Oviha v'noshka al rosha. Her father arose, Amram, and kissed her on her head. Omar Lo Biti niskaymen nevuasech. When the house was filled with light, he associated that with the birth of the Savior of the Jewish people, and he said, well, now your prophecy is fulfilled. The Kevan Shetilu Lior, when that very child 3 months later was cast into the river, the seeming end of the child, without serving as Savior, Omad Aviha v'tafcha al Rosha, her father arose and tapped her on her head. Omar Lo Biti Heicha Nevuasech, says, where did your prophecy go? V'hainu dichtiv, and it's with that in mind that the pasuk says, she, Miriam, stood at a distance watching the basket with the infant in it, Moshe Rabbeinu in it, and she was waiting to see Maya Selo, Leida Mayahe B'Soif Nivuasa, to see what was going to be with regard to her prophecy, what was going to be the end. And of course, he was saved, and her prophecy came to fulfillment. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.